What happens when one man tries to watch all the horror films of the 1980s? Well, we're about to find out because I'm your host, Josh Spiegel, and this is the 80s Project. Welcome back to the 80s Project, and we're decently into 1984 by now. And you know, this year has had a mixture of like some really big major players and some kind of small, fun, obscure things. But we're going into October now, and that's normally when all of the Halloween releases come out. So let's take a look to see if this year followed suit. Let's dive right into everyone's favorite spooky month as we go to October, and we go to an entry that came out on an unspecified date there with Bloodsuckers from Outer Space. It's got a farmer out working, and there's some sort of mysterious windstorm, and right after, he starts spewing up blood while the cows just sort of like, you know, look on like cows do. And he becomes some sort of zombie thing that looks suspiciously like those from Mutant. The police come out to investigate and find blood everywhere, but they want to cover it up so as not to freak out the locals. But some scientists are able to wrangle up another transformed person, and it can talk. Jeff here is a new photographer, and he really wants to escape the farming life and has a bit of a temper. The military gets called in, and they try to break down what happened. Like, it seems that they've tracked an energy field from outer space that's hit the area in the form of a gust of wind, which enters the respiratory system and starts to take over, causing people to hemorrhage all over their blood and then reanimates the body. That body then seeks out more blood to drink from other people.
Bloodsuckers from outer space.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a title. Jeff meets a girl and brings her home, telling that his parents died when he was 5, and his brother is one of those researchers. But soon, when he goes out, they find that a whole bunch of the community is already changed and have to fight back while making some meta jokes along the way.
Damn, that incidental music's scary.
And this little backyard oddity is from Glenn Coburn, who both wrote and directed, and also plays the character of Ralph in the film. It was his first movie, and he'd only make a couple more, although he'd return from nearly a 20-year gap to do a movie called Brain Tumor, in which he would again appear as a character named Ralph. I don't see a budget listed anywhere, but this is clearly done on the cheap, and it debuted at Joe Bob's Drive-In Movie Festival where it got some attention. It never really took off though, and only circled the cult scene for quite a while, and recently started getting some more belated appreciation. And this is a silly good time. It's a 3.5. I think you have to enjoy that whole homemade cinema thing to really be on board with this, because it's made on a shoestring budget, but it's charming and silly and beat Return of the Living Dead and The Happening to the punch with talking zombies and killer wind. The HCS is just a 1 though, because it's very obscure and only recently started getting some attention, and even then, not much. Should you watch it? I'd say yes, it's a fun little flick.
Your father was like a brother to me.
My father was your brother.
Well, I guess that explains it then.
Let's continue this block back in the USA with a film that released on October 5th, although it did have a premiere way back in January in North Carolina, and another screening there in August. But this is when it went wider, and it's Fall Break. The Mutilator. It's Big Ed's birthday, and his son, I guess Little Ed, wants to surprise him by cleaning his guns, and he accidentally shoots and kills his mom. But just then, Big Ed comes home and hits him, and then chills with a drink, basically like shutting down. It then jumps ahead in time, and we have a bunch of college students, and it looks like this is Little Ed. now grown up, and they're all ready for fall break. But Ed gets a call from his dad to help close up his property for the season. His friends all decide that they're going to go help him do it for their break and spend the time at the beach, and they set out and cue the music because this movie has a kick-ass title track. Well, for when it was called Fall Break.
We're going on now.
A fall break, walking hand in hand in the moonlight.
They get to the place and it's pretty run down, and he reminisces about some crazy stuff his dad did. But it seems like his pops might just be there, hiding out with an axe in his hand and dreams of killing his kid. That night, everyone gets up to shenanigans, but before you know it, Pops is doing people in. But I have to give the guy credit for being the least observant person of this whole year. He's in a small pool with his girlfriend. They're the only two people in there. And yet, Big Ed is able to get into the pool and drown Linda and then get her body out of it, all without Mike ever seeing him. He then starts adding to that body count, and if you looked at that poster and were like, I wonder if that big hook thing is just artistic license, or if we're going to see it used in the film. And yeah, you do. You really, really do. And, okay, so the story here is that it was written and co-directed by Buddy Cooper, and was the first thing he'd be involved with. And after this, he'd only returned to direct one other movie, and I'll talk about that in a bit. Seems that he was a lawyer who was really interested in films and wanted to make one, and read that most horror flicks are profitable, so he figured that that would be the way to go. He raised up $150,000 of his own money to make it, but also got a bank loan to increase the budget to around $1 million. The working title of the film and the intended title was Fall Break, and it screened under that title for the January premiere. But when it had that wider release, they changed the title to The Mutilator in order to appeal more to the horror crowd and make clear what kind of film that it was. It was initially given an X rating due to the amount of violence, and at first they wanted to release it unrated, but when theaters wouldn't carry it that way and the film lost money, they went back in and made the necessary cuts. But by then, the momentum had died down. It didn't really get any attention at the time and didn't sell a lot of tickets, but it did get a nice placement on a number of video store shelves and over time developed a nice cult following. It eventually became enough for Cooper to return to make a sequel with Mutilator 2 in 2023, more than 40 years later. And I like this more than the usual slasher flick, so it's a 3.5 from me. It just has more in the way of atmosphere, and those kills are above and beyond. And come on, that theme song. The HCS is just a 2 though, since I think it's more obscure, and not that many people have seen it, but that number is growing, and I think that after a few years that number would go up, but it's still getting up there, and I think everyone knows that box cover, even if they're not familiar with the contents of the film. Should you watch it? Yeah, take a break and watch it. Get ready to rock, because 1 week later, on October 12th, in Nashville, Tennessee, there was the debut of Rocktober Blood. We open on a recording session with Billy I as he jams to I'm Back and just wails. After he's done, one of the backup singers goes upstairs to take a jacuzzi. And shortly after, an unseen person comes in and kills the producer and his assistant. When Lynn comes out, she discovers the bodies, and it appears to be the work of Billy, and he's gone mad. But before he can kill her, a security guard intervenes. We jump ahead 2 years.
Not to mention the near-fatal stabbing of Lynn Starling. But that was a year ago.
Oh. Well, which is it, movie? And find out that Billy was caught and went to jail and was given the death penalty. The band decided to reform under the name Head Mistress with Lynn as the vocalist, and they're getting ready to kick off a new tour. But right after, a man in a monster mask shows up and takes it off to reveal that it's Billy underneath, seemingly back from the grave. In order to calm down, she goes for a relaxing stay up in the woods, but is soon bothered by someone following her, and then strange phone calls, and before long, a murderer is there, knocking people off. And it looks like Billy is actually back? But how did he survive his execution? Unless he didn't, because it could just as easily be that Lynn has gone off the deep end herself. Well, she had better figure it out fast, because her big Rocktober Blood tour is kicking off soon, and Billy might just be planning his comeback there. And this one comes from director Beverly Sebastian, and it's her first film on the project, but it will likely be the only one, because most of her other films are action-oriented as opposed to horror. But she made the classic Gator Bait back in '73, and right after this one also did Gator Bait 2 Cajun Justice. She frequently teamed up with her husband, who would co-write the scripts, and they did do this one together. The band that's featured in the movie, Head Mistress, was an actual rock group called Sorcery, and they performed the songs for the soundtrack. And it didn't really get a strong release, it sort of just like faded away, but it's since grown in cult stature. But there's all kinds of controversy around this one that has held it up from getting a proper re-release. For a while, the rights belonged to Lionsgate, and they claimed that the original negatives were destroyed in a vault fire. Or, at least, that's what a number of people claimed. But that fire was never reported in any media, nor any industry trades. And after the rights lapsed, all that they turned over to the Sebastians was a tape master of the film, so the quality was low. So, to drum up interest and money in making Rocktober Blood 2, Billy's Revenge, they offered up a new remastered Blu-ray pressing of the original film to fans, intending to use the money from the sales to create it. But when people instead received a shoddily done Blu-ray ROM pressing of the VHS quality master that was already available, people were pissed. Since they were using the fundraiser through an animal charity, it made refunds not accessible to angry buyers, so they were stuck. And then to make matters worse, the Sebastians then announced that they used the money to purchase a new barbecue smoker, possibly to open a restaurant with, which just made people angrier. Finally, though, TerrorVision bought the rights from them to do a proper restoration and reissue of a Blu-ray, although it has not yet been released. And I like this, but I do wish it were better, so it's a 3. The setup is great, and the finale is a blast, but there's too much nothing happening in the middle, and the last half hour of the film stops the narrative in its tracks to just be a concert, which is cool if you're in the mood for a concert, but you're in the middle of a movie here, guys. The HCS is a 2, since I feel like it's starting to be a bigger deal, but it's still this obscure film that not a lot of people have seen, and there's no real star attractions featured. Should you watch it? Yes, you should. It's definitely a fun watch. So for this next one, we're going to have to travel all the way over to India and check out a little number that arrived there on October 19th with Purana Mandir. It tells us that 200 years ago there was this demon named Samri that was worshipped, and this king is traveling with his daughter Rupali. She wanders off on their journey and ends up in Samri's lair, and he goes on the attack, draining Rupali of her soul. He's captured though, and he's put on trial and sentenced to death, but before they do, he places a curse on the king where all of the women in his line will die in childbirth. Oh, and his head is cut off and put in a box, which is then chained up and put into the dungeon with some sort of holy trident on top, and then walled off, and they're like really making sure no one finds this head. It then jumps to modern day, and The king's great-great-grandson is now here, and his daughter is going off to college. Suman has a boyfriend, and look, the minute that I said that this film was from India, I know that you were wondering if there were going to be musical numbers. And come on, guys, this is a horror film about a demon curse passed from generation to generation from a severed head. Of course there's musical numbers. Dad disapproves of Sanjay, though, because he's a silly commoner. And when I say disapprove, I mean he hires people to literally whip him. This makes him sad, so he sings about it. So Pops reveals the nature of the curse. And if they get married and have a child, Suman is doomed to die. They believe they can break the curse by going to the castle where the head is buried away, and they encounter a number of odd people there, while also having fantasy sequences with women covered only in hay, which I guarantee was itchy as hell. After a whole bunch of random encounters, including blood showers, they end up smashing through the wall, and the head is reunited with the body, so Samri is back. And this is the work of Shyam Ramsey and Tulsi Ramsey, and they both directed a number of big hit Bollywood horror flicks over the decades, including the movie Mahakal, which was basically a remake of Nightmare on Elm Street. This one was a massive hit over there and spawned an entire subgenre of films with similar storylines, and even had a sequel in the following year, simply called Samri. And this is a 3, and honestly, there's some really amusing sequences here. But the damn thing is 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and there's just so much that's unnecessary. Like cut this down by about an hour, this would have been higher. The HCS is just a 1 though, although it's way more important in India, but here, it's completely obscure. Should you watch it? I'd say yes, but be prepared for it to be overly long with some silly songs, but big chunks of it are really rewarding.
बोल कटेले हमने बड़े संगीन जुर्म किए हैं मगर बड़े रंगीन किया है.
Here's one that looks like it arrived on October 24th in Italy, although it is a US film, but it wouldn't get released here until 1985, and it's The Devil's Gift. There's a psychic woman, and she's doing the Ouija board by herself, and lady, you're not supposed to do that. And she's trying to reach someone named Thomas. A storm breaks out, complete with earthquakes and lightning, and it seems to possess a toy monkey. And we meet a kid and his dad, and it's the kid's birthday. His mom is out of the picture, and David has a new girlfriend, and she brings little Michael that monkey. But look! Someone else got him a damn AT-AT, so anything else is just gonna be silly. Afterwards, David starts having nightmares and noticing that his houseplants are all dying off, but when that monkey clangs its cymbals, he sees a fly just drop dead. But then things seem to escalate as it seems to have a mesmerizing ability, causing Susan to start a fire in the kitchen. It takes the life of the family dog. Meanwhile, this is the most intimidating method of asking about breakfast ever.
You want your eggs scrambled or fried? Hard or soft? Medium. With cheese? What kind? Swiss or cheddar? American. Toast? What kind? Wheat or rye? White. You know what you're gonna get. A knuckle sandwich and a kidney fudge.
Hello.
Like that kid is backing away scared, and I would be too. He gets concerned enough that he goes to talk to a psychic, and she suggests that a spirit could have entered through an idol, and he realizes that it may be the damn monkey. But will he figure it out before Susan can kill little Michael? And this one is by Kenneth J. Burton, who also co-wrote the script, and it's one of only 2 movies he was involved with. Although the other film is Merlin's Shop of Mystical Wonders, and that movie is an anthology that features an edited down version of this. Now, if you saw Oz Perkins' film, The Monkey, you'll notice a certain similarity here. That film is based on a Stephen King short story from 1980. And this story seems to be some sort of adaptation of it, considering both have a death happening after the cymbal clash. But there's no mention of any credit given here. One thing King's story didn't have, though, is the Bethagram. It's like a pentagram, except it's more like a kid's toy sheriff badge. It wouldn't really get much of a release and was rather ignored until it was chopped down to use in Merlin's shop, and that film went on to be featured on MST3K and got the riffing treatment. And this is a 2.5. It just feels like a dull TV movie with very low stakes throughout and has a really slow middle. Honestly, were it not for a fun finale and wild closing scene, it would just be a 2. The significance is a 1 though, because it's not known at all, isn't discussed, and doesn't feature anyone you'll recognize. Should you watch it? Probably not, although you won't be too upset if you do. Just a couple of days later, on October 26th, we're going back into slasher territory, and it's time to check out some silent madness. It starts off in an institution, and it seems like they've been releasing patients earlier than they should have because they're overbooked and underfunded, and have created a new release program. And hey look, it's the She's in the Bar guy from Frankenhooker. But then it turns out that they were meant to release a harmless patient named John Howard, but oops, they accidentally released Howard Johns instead, and he is a psychotic killer. He goes after Ronnie, who's disappointingly not wearing his short shorts here. And you'll notice that things keep flying at the camera, and I'll come back to that. The mix-up is discovered by Doogie's mom, but she can't get anyone to listen to her, while Howard goes around putting co-eds' heads in vices. Seems he was being experimented on in Ward L, a section of the institution that did extreme corrective actions, so the head wants to keep it all quiet. There's also a sorority with a very strict house mother, and Howard seems to be hiding in their house, while Joan seeks help from local law enforcement with Carrie's teacher, as well as Officer Omega. Because his killing spree before getting captured revolved around that sorority house, they have Joan pose as an alumni member, and she goes there and discovers the dude hiding out in the boiler room. Trouble is, no one believes her, and the institution decides to try to handle things themselves in order to keep a lid on the whole thing. So, now, everyone is headed to the sorority for a final face-off, even if some people are too busy playing Dragon's Lair, and I don't blame them, because that game was rad, even if I could never really get past like 2 levels. So, earlier I talked about that stuff coming at the screen, and it's because this one was originally released in 3D, although it was at the very end of the early 80s 3D revival. It was directed by Simon Nocturne, and he only directed a few films, most of them in the 70s. He would only make one more film after this, an action film in '85 called Savage Dawn, although he'd be involved in some other things as a writer or producer. The budget of the film was around $600K, and at one point, Lynn Redgrave was in talks to play Joan, but she wanted $10,000 more than they were willing to spend. Nocturne ultimately opted not to cast Redgrave since he said that he could put that money towards better 3D effects, and that would be the bigger draw than the actress. Also, at some point, Maureen O'Sullivan of Tarzan fame was meant to play the house mother, as was Shelley Winters, but for one reason or another, they dropped out before filming began. It did get a small theatrical run, although it was never able to find any sort of wider distribution, and was mainly available on the home market, where it would eventually build up a small cult following. And I like this fine, it's a 3. It feels like standard stuff, but it's done well, and it's entertaining even if the middle drags a fair bit. The HCS is just a 1.5 since it never really got the recognition it was hoping, and is only recognized on a cult level, and only has a few known actors involved. Should you watch it? Yep, give this madness a chance. This next one will be interesting because it's not a traditional film release, but on October 26th, just a few days before Halloween, we got Terror in the Aisles. We start with a bunch of people in a movie theater watching a horror film while Donald Pleasance talks during it, and like, hey, Donald, shh. We then see clips from Halloween, When a Stranger Calls, Psycho, The Birds, and more. But Doc Loomis explains how people watch horror films and talk to the screen. And then he joins in the fun. Get him! But then this guy arrives with a swastika on his jacket and he isn't immediately shamed and kicked out of the theater, which is the real horror story here. But yes, I'm going to make this one a little shorter than usual because this isn't a regular film and is instead a documentary about horror films and the way we enjoy them. But in reality, it's a way to show a bunch of cool horror movie scenes from the different eras. Officer Lewis is here too, also talking through the movies, but at least they don't have their phones out or anything. And damn, I'm so glad that theaters have upgraded from this horror seating that we used to deal with. Like before stadium seating, you'd have some big-haired person in front of you, just blocking your view. They discuss different aspects of the genre and has one of my favorite Hitchcock quotes of all time.
And don't talk about baseball. There's a bomb under there. Get rid of it.
Weirdly though, it's not just horror films since they throw in clips from Marathon Man, Vice Squad, and Nighthawks in there too. But this was directed by Andrew J. Kuhn, and most of what he did was behind the scenes promo stuff, trailers, and some docs, although after this he took a 15-year break from directing and stuck to trailers, and in fact is noted for revolutionizing how they were made. It actually got a theatrical release and had a weird problem. It got hit with an X rating, which is strange because all of the films that it uses clips from were rated R. So I guess it wasn't the content, but the amount of the content in one place. They had to trim out some of the moments from the movie in order to get the R. So again, in order to get an R rating, they had to remove footage from other films that were rated R. It did well at the box office, bringing in $10 million, so keep in mind that people were going to the theaters to watch a bunch of clips from other horror movies, which is kind of interesting. And how do you judge this? I'll give it a 3 to keep it down the middle, because I like watching this, but it's not like I can categorize it as a movie. It's not really saying anything too profound about horror. So their narrations and stuff are whatever, but it is fun seeing all these cool moments strung together. The HCS is a 2 because it did get a bunch of notice and a lot of people have seen it, but I would argue that the notoriety mostly came from the movies featured in it as opposed to the documentary itself. Should you watch it? Yeah, even if it's just for Pleasance's hilarious cutaways.
It's only a movie. It's only a movie.
Here's another one that was a little more prominent, and it actually came out on the very same day, October 26th, and it's Body Double. It begins with a glam vampire in a coffin, but it's just a film shoot, and the actor has frozen up due to claustrophobia. The vamp is Dr. Gordon, and the director is Sipowicz. And hey, it's Tale of the Pup. This little place is still there. But because of his episode, they wrap early, and Jake goes home to discover his girlfriend, Barbara freaking Crampton, is cheating on him. He goes to auditions and also an acting class, and one of his fellow students is Star-Lord's grandpa. And it seems like he has a childhood trauma about being in tight spaces. When Sam hears that Jake doesn't have a place to live and he's going to be away on a job, he offers for him to house sit at his friend's spaceship house. Now, this is a real place. It's called the Chemosphere, and it was built in 1960 as the most modern home in the world. It's been featured in a bunch of movies and shows, like an old Outer Limits episode and the 2000 Charlie's Angels movie. So, when they get there, Sam shows Jake one of the neighbors, an attractive woman who dances nude in front of her window. But as he keeps watching her, he sees her visited by an abusive man. He becomes a touch obsessed and starts to follow her around. She shops in lavish stores and is also being trailed by a strange-looking man who tries to steal her purse, and they end up kissing. That night, though, while spying on her, he sees that man enter her place and races to try to save her, but arrives just as she's murdered by a massive power drill. He gets scrutinized by the police, but then things take a turn when he's watching an adult film, one that features a working girl, but also Brinke Stevens. And when he notices Holly's specific dancing, he realizes that she might have been the body that he was watching. So who was that in the window? And who died? And what's going on? And why does it also involve a full-on musical interlude from Frankie Goes to Hollywood? So this one is another entry from Brian De Palma, and we've only had him on the project so far with Dressed to Kill in '80. But in between then and this one, he'd done Blowout and Scarface. And if Dressed was his tip of the hat to Psycho, this is definitely doing the Rear Window thing and throwing in some Vertigo for good measures. In fact, it was Dressed to Kill that inspired this movie, because they were interviewing body doubles for Angie Dickinson's in that one. And De Palma wanted to devise a thriller around that idea. He wanted to push the envelope and make something that bordered on an X rating, and even wanted to have adult actress Annette Haven play Holly, but the studio said no, although she does have a cameo in the Holly Does Hollywood trailer. It had a $10 million budget, but the reviews were mixed, and it debuted on the same day as The Terminator and Terror in the Isles. Both of those films beat it though, and it only went on to earn around $9 million, a bomb. It got some mixed notices too, since it got a Golden Globe nomination for Melanie Griffith's performance, but also a Razzie nom for Worst Director. It did get some cult notoriety though, and even a Bollywood remake in 1993, complete with musical numbers. And this is a solid film. It's a 4. It loses me a bit near the second half when the plot contrivances get a little far-fetched, like he sees a porn star that he thinks is involved, so he goes down to the porn company and auditions and ends up with a lead role opposite her in order to meet her. But it's got great tension, a nice atmosphere, and a good amount of enjoyable moments going on. The HCS is a 3.5 since it's by a major director and did get a good amount of attention and notoriety, but it wasn't any sort of hit at the time, and it didn't leave too big of a mark on the industry until much later on. Should you watch it? Absolutely. If anything, just for the relax sequence. It's cinematic magic. Our final film of the block is a smaller scale entry, and it arrived on October 31st, Halloween, and it's Day of the Reaper. As it begins, we can see that it's extremely low budget. We have a prisoner being transferred from a sanitarium and just someone's Volvo or Gremlin or whatever this car is. But along the way, he breaks loose from his restraints and attacks what appears to be 2 teenagers in charge of him. For some reason, he was being transported in a flannel shirt, complete with a hood on his head and big black gloves. He's shot, but it doesn't seem to have any effect, and he kills them both, escaping into the woods. We then meet a young woman, and she seems to be the survivor of the rampage that got the killer put away in the first place. She says all her friends are dead, and that he's sentenced to execution but fears that he will escape and come after her. I should mention that this is all silent, with only music or narration over top of it. Seems like she's right to be concerned though, even though there seems to be some supernatural stuff happening as he just vanishes from behind her. We get a flashback to the events that led to his incarceration as she goes to the beach with her friends, but on the way back, the car overheats. They look for shelter but end up coming face to face with the Reaper, who appears to be about 16 years old. He kills some of them, but she seems to get the upper hand until getting away, and a police officer, also 16, says that they've been looking for him for a while. They try to settle back into their lives, but that Reaper is still on the hunt, stalking the ladies, taking them out one by one. The detective gets involved and sets a trap for the Reaper, which literally amounts to Jennifer just standing in a dead-end alley. I don't know how long she was there, but the guy just shows up right away, like right away. And the cop just walks up and arrests him. But then it goes back to the present day, and the Reaper is back. Or is he? Because this movie has some twists it wants to throw out. And it's from Tim Ritter, and we'll be hearing more about him in the future, as he's the director of some classic low-budget fare like Killing Spree and Truth or Dare. But he's still active and did Sharks of the Corn and parts of Catnado. This was his first film, made on Super 8, with a mere $1,000 budget that he raised by working as a dishwasher. Now, I've said this in regards to other movies at some point, but Super 8 doesn't really work well with sync sound. So you really can't record sound while you're filming and then match it up later like you can, but it's a really difficult process. So most Super 8 films just add the sound later, which is what they did here. So all of the dialogue is post-dubbed. It didn't get a lot of attention at the time, but it earned itself a cult following over the years after Ritter's later works gained some popularity. For a while, it was only available in a really shabby transfer that was hard to see due to the quality level, but it's recently been remastered and is now available. And there's just something about that backyard charm I love, so I'll give this a 3. It's silly and cheap, but this is a bunch of teens making a movie and clearly having fun doing so. Is it bad? Sure, but you can also see that this is someone who loves the genre, and the seeds for making enjoyable trash are here. The significance is just a 1.5 though, because it's still not known at all. It didn't impact the genre at all, but I'll give it the 0.5 for kickstarting Ritter's career, even if he's still an underground name. Should you watch it? If you're interested in seeing some fun homemade horror, sure. So there you have it, October of 1984. And yeah, I gotta say my favorite one of this block, it's tough between The Mutilator and Body Double. They're both really fun movies, but I have to say I think the Body Double is the better made movie of the two, so I'm gonna go there. But let me know which you think is your favorite down below. What's your favorite one on this block? Tell me in the comments down below. There's lots on this block to pick from, so tell me that. Which of these have you seen? Which of these would you now like to see? Tell me that as well. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you like the channel, subscribe to it, and also check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/movietimelines, where you can help support the channel and keep this project going. And yeah, we're getting closer to the ending of 1984, but there's still some pretty big movies left to come. So stay tuned right here, and we'll get to them very shortly on the 80s Project.